Good morning.
Good morning.
Why become a Buddhist? Why become a Buddhist now? You know, we hear about them. There's articles left and right on, in this day and age, if you're a highly intellectual person with a whole bunch of degrees, if you're a very smart individual, then chances are you're going to end up being a Buddhist. Okay? It's the biggest growing, there was a segment on the news some time ago, I think it was on MSNBC or CNBC somewhere. It's the biggest growing religion in America. Okay. Why? I like to ask questions without telling anybody of my own practice, my own spiritual practice. I hesitate to say my faith, or I hesitate to say my religion somehow, because it's a practice, for me at least. Of course, I try to do my best to fulfill the religious aspects of it fully. However, many times I've noticed people say, well, I've been to the Dalai Lama's lecture, gathering in Madison Square Garden. I went to Thich Nhat Hanh's lecture and in Pasadena Civic Auditorium. It was so moving, it was so touching. I just realized that it's for me. Wonderful. And they have no clue most of the time. They've read a few books. They try to bring in like Deepak Chopra in there and all that interesting jazz. I was just, what? Why? Do you know anything about the Dhamma? Have you researched it? Have you looked into it? And most of the time, my experience at least has been a stunned look on people's faces. And I cringe when I ask the question, do you know anything about the Four Noble Truths? Usually there isn't a response. So what is it? What do we mean by becoming Buddhists in this day and age? What does that mean for the individual? Because what I have encountered in different meetings with people, questions coming at me online, or people approaching me, asking me, okay, why did you become a Buddhist? That's another thing. And I find an opportunity to actually share some Dhamma with them, if there is an opening for that, a receptivity for that. However, what I've seen, even in writings, in lectures, in legitimate forums, in panels, is the person, like in my last talk a few weeks ago, I talked about how to preserve the Dhamma. I guess you can call this talk like part 2 of that, because preservation of the Dhamma has everything to do with our understanding of the Dhamma. What are we preserving, after all, and how? So, I noticed that many times we bring in our own worldviews, our own lifestyle, our own identifications, our own passions into the Dhamma, and expect it to comply. Hey, it has to fit my own narrative in my mind, how I am seeing myself now. The Dhamma has to comply with that. And if it doesn't, guess what? I'll come up with my own version. Okay? Yes, it's a free country. I mean, to some degree, I guess. But is that what it is, the Dhamma? Is that what we are trying to claim to be, this badge of mine? Now it used to be Christian, Jewish, Muslim, or whatever. Now it is, or Hindu, or now it is Buddhist. Aha! Why? Because it's cool to be a Buddhist. Why? Because look at the Dalai Lama, he hugs everybody. Not to put down His Holiness. However, oftentimes there isn't enough explanation, clarification as to what it is these people are coming to listen to. The Dhamma is not just about the art of happiness. You go deep. The Dhamma is not just comparison between Christianity and Buddhism. It's much deeper than that. Because people are seeing, oh, bridges. There are bridges between what I understand Christianity to be and the Dhamma. So they're the same, right? I've had people come up years ago say that to Bhante Ratnasara across the street about the writings of Thich Nhat Hanh, for example. Again, wonderful individuals, great teachers. However, there needs to be some clarification, at least to the masses, as to what we mean by the Dhamma. When a person approaches to put on, are they putting on another garb like we were talking about last time? Or are they going back to the teachings? Well, what are the teachings? Okay, Four Noble Truths, this Eightfold Path, fine. You can delineate them properly, perhaps. Memorize them, know them by heart. But what is it? What I've noticed often is people are trying to negotiate passions with the Dhamma and have them coexist together. They don't coexist. Passions and the Dhamma, they do not coexist. Let's not fool ourselves. They never did. They never will. If the objective is the experience of Nibbana. Sometimes individuals come and ask, but I love to have these desires. I love to have these. I love how my body feels. I love how food tastes. Fine. Fine. The Buddha never said go hungry. But we need to understand, why is there suffering? Suffering exists because of attachment. Suffering and attachment are one and the same thing, in fact. So long as suffering has not hit the mark in our mind, in our consciousness, in our psyche, so long as we don't understand the first noble truth of suffering, we're fooling ourselves. Sorry. Because passions still hold the front row seat in our lives, and there's only one. Okay. That might discourage a few people. Another element that is curious for me to discuss with individuals is secular Buddhism. This is another hot topic that people don't want to touch upon. Well, I go there full speed ahead. One has to be able to take care of the Dhamma like we take care of a loved one. And to just wholeheartedly take up whatever is coming, whatever the flavor of the month is, with the Buddhist practice is this month, and just accept with this, yes, let's acceptance and all that jazz. It's a joke. It's not doing justice to the Dhamma. Specifically, what some secular Buddhists look at when they look at the Dhamma is, these two things that they have difficulties gulping down in their didactic reasoning, perhaps, or deconstructionist attitude of rebirth and karma, among other things. For example, the feats and different stories that we see in the Nikayas, that could never have happened. I mean, really? Nagas? Dragons? What is this? Like, Lord of the Rings or something like that? So So what has really changed in this person's life, for example? They saw something there and they're like, okay, this fits my image, my perspective on life. The new direction in my life. So I'll adopt this. I'll take this, but I have to trim it. I have to clip the edges to fit my own worldview. And that is when we're really not preserving the Dhamma. In fact, we are, whether you believe it or not, whether you accept it or not, whether you understand it or not, bringing a lot of bad merits to yourself. That person would have been much better off if that person never came and approached the Dhamma. So there is seriousness to the practice. It's not all playful, this and that, huggy and all that, you know, that we see sometimes spiritual teachers manifesting on podiums and you know, on screen, on social media. There is this urgency. That's what I hope you will be able to take my message that I'm trying to convey in that sense. The urgency, the Samvega, which the Buddha always emphasized to his death. Do we have that urgency? Or are we just trying to build houses, dreams, accomplishments to be coming, you know, from the horizon? Passions that we were wanting to fulfill. In the Dveda Vitaka Sutta, on two kinds of thoughts, the Buddha describes how this path is about gaining more intelligence, more discernment, more wisdom. It's about constructiveness, doing things differently where there is less suffering. And it's about Nibbana. And that's the other thing, that many Buddhists these days have this notion to kind of postpone this, Nibbana is not going to happen to you, for you, in this life. Forget it. It's okay. Forget it. Go ahead and add more merits to yourself. Do dana, do generosity, generous acts. Learn the suttas. Yes, in your next life, you're most probably going to be reborn in a heavenly realm. What? Probability? Are we doing now probability? Are we gamblers? I just imagine for 1 millisecond the Buddha was alive, sitting there listening to that nonsense. And they're not just Mahayana, by the way, teachers who say that. They're Theravada teachers from typical Theravada countries. The emphasis of a laity is just go ahead and donate. Do generous acts. It's beautiful, yes. But as far as the actual attainments come in, even jhanas. So we've kind of distanced ourselves from the reality of cessation, the reality of relinquishment from ourselves, from suffering. And suffering holds very tightly the hand of attachment, passions, wanting to fulfill the 6 sense doors with whatever they can offer us as best as we can. Maximization of pleasures and minimization of painful or unpleasant things. So sometimes many of us, if not always, have a tendency of trying to justify our existence through our worldviews, through our understanding of life. We justify our existence. We need to justify our existence somehow, at least conceptually. So we come up with, it might be today, the flavor of the month is Buddhism, tomorrow might be Islam, the next day it might be Judaism, you name it. Or we can come up with something. But ultimately it's not about any particular religious path. It's about sustaining, perpetuating this sense of I, this sense of myself, this sense of identity. This is who I am. These are my beliefs, my views. And that's why the Buddha picked, for the very first step of the Eightfold Path, he picked right view, which is wisdom, or harmonious perspective. It's the same thing. Because so long as that thorn is not pulled out, the mind will not be able to perceive the others. I sometimes use this analogy when I address, for example, different symptoms that individuals have in mental health, disorders, etc., in my own practice. And I say it's like you going on, we're living in Los Angeles, you're jumping on the 110 and expecting to end up where 405 takes you by only taking the 110. Let's say you want to end up San Francisco, but you're taking the 5 South. It's as simple as that. When we don't have the right view, it's as simple as that. So the right view has to be there. Otherwise, it's micchaditi, which is wrong view. And that is what I'm trying to delineate. I'm trying to underline whether it is present in many of the individuals coming to the Dhamma. So mine is just a question, not an accusation. Just a question, a curiosity. Is there right view? And if there is right view, guess what? Everything else follows. You have the Four Noble Truths. I was mentioning to some meditators a few weeks ago as to what makes a Buddhist. In my opinion, I said, to my understanding, you need to at the very least, have a clear understanding of what the Four Noble Truths are. 1, you need to know the Eightfold Path, therefore. 2, 3, you need to have an understanding, or at least conceptual, makes sense, understanding of the Paticcasamuppada, or the 12 links of causal relations. You also need to understand the 7 factors of awakening, without which it's almost impossible to experience Nibbana. I'm not making any of this up. It's in the teachings. But are we actually bothering? Are we actually putting the effort and time to go and look for these things? See, the image that hit me the other day is, so many people nowadays want to become teachers. Nobody wants to be a student. Especially in the field of Dhamma. Everybody wants to be a Dhamma teacher for some reason. Wow! And I know that as a high school teacher years ago, my students would come to me and high school, senior, juniors, whatever, they're trying to decide what area of studies to jump into. Some of them wanted to be nuclear physicists, some of them wanted to be psychologists, some of them wanted to be lawyers. And let's pick the nuclear physicist. There's so many stringent guidelines they need to abide by. Starting with the GE units. Well, actually starting much earlier in middle school, high school. And then they have to jump through so many hoops, go through so many background checks, get their PhD, do their postdocs and all these amazing things, and then get special clearances from the government in order for them to have access to some facilities that might allow them to work on nuclear stuff. Okay. If we are that demanding of certain proper protocols for something so, as far as the Dhamma goes, so mundane and superficial as nuclear science, if we're that demanding, how come we're not demanding of the Dhamma teachers? Of ourselves? I mean, I'm just positing the question. Because we have these demands we place on each other. I mean, even the DMV, you can't just go around driving a car in America. You have to take some tests. So, likes and dislikes, in essence, those are the three poisons. Lobha, dosa, moha. Lust, or greed, anger, aversion, or avarice, and delusion, ignorance, indifference. The idea that this is me, this is who I am, independent of everything. These are at the crux of wrong views. So long as these are being transported in the person, in these numerous, I guess, millions of people now in the world who become Buddhists, as long as that is being transported in this new garb that calls itself, oh, I'm a Buddhist now. I have a funky name. I'm unique. Then ignorance is still there. By the way, this is not just about those of us who want to become Buddhists. You have millions of people. I think I heard one time that it's almost like 1 billion Buddhists in the world, in Asia, and this and that. And it was like, okay, they are also included. Because it's about ignorance versus wisdom. This path is always about wisdom, gaining wisdom. Yata bhutang pajanati, understanding how things come to be. That is the way that we understand that no, we are not slaves to passions. We're not. You don't believe me? Just test it. See how there's a moment where it doesn't exist, and all of a sudden it is there. Why? Because it triggered. Why? Because the sixth sense doors brought in some information. Ah, that was attractive. Ooh, okay. And then it sustains itself, and we usually try to gratify ourselves by jumping into, identify with, and be enmeshed in, captured in that experience, and now we deal with the ramifications. And then what happens? There's a moment of gap until the next thing happens. But when you speed this up, it's almost like, animation, or a feature, it's like 24 frames per second, but slow it down just a little bit. 23.4, 23.7, 22 frames, and you see strobing. Da, 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 da. That's what meditation does. It allows you to slow things down, and you all of a sudden see, oh, so I wasn't always enmeshed, drenching in the passion. There were moments of gaps here and there. So you mean to say that I and this passion, me, are not the same thing? Yeah. Talk to an elderly person who's not as excited as you about the same things that they were when they were your age. Talk to your parents if they're around, or somebody of that age. And you'll see that it fluctuates. Why? Because of impermanence. Impermanence with it brings suffering. The youthfulness is gone. Terrifying. But why is it terrifying? Because of attachment. No one's going to appreciate me. No one's going to give me the attention I deserve. Why? Because I have gray hair. Or I have no hair. I'm catching up. So it's, we have to bring this playfulness because, it's not that serious, but at the same time we have to be honest. Who are we fooling? Are we fooling ourselves? Okay. Who's the loser if we are? Ourselves. I say something I say a lot of shocking things to my patients, but one of them is this: you came alone and you're going to go alone. But he doesn't love me, but she doesn't love me, but we don't. How come there's this frown on your face? You don't even love yourself. How can anyone love that? You're moping, rolling in your, distress, depressive symptoms or whatever. But they can switch sides all of a sudden the moment you see somebody else looking and smiling at, what happened there? See the impermanence part? Well, that was the crust, and now you're going to fall back. That's being a victim to this ebb and flow, constant emotion. But whose time is being wasted? Yours. The person's, oneself. So this path is about intelligence of oneself. Not your teacher, nothing to do with any of that. It has to do with you. Are you suffering still? And that's why the Buddha called it a noble truth of suffering. Do you see that when you're suffering? Do you see any reason for you to pause for a millisecond and say, why? Why did this suffering occur? It's attachment. If you were not holding on to this globe of fire, this torch, you're not going to get burned. That's the craving. And we have the Eightfold Path to take us there, to that state where, but it's not somewhere over there in time like I said in the past. Again, it's not over there. Nibbana, I mentioned this in a meditation class yesterday. Nibbana is not somewhere there that you end up in time and space, where the laws of physics don't apply. Or Nibbana, some people think Nibbana occurs after death. No, it's not. It's something you experience. And there are many mini Nibbanas, by the way. The moment you let go of an attachment, there's a mini Nibbana because there is cessation. There's freedom. When Ajahn Chah, who passed away some years ago, was asked about Nibbana by his students, his reply was very simple. It's the reality of non-grasping. Reality of non-grasping. Reality of non-attachment. Reality, underline, underscore, hyphenate, whatever you want to do. Reality. That happens now. And essentially, no, you don't need to believe in rebirth. No. Not that it doesn't exist. You be the judge of that. You sit down and practice. Instead of giving up and rushing out of the meditation hall and saying, rebirth doesn't exist. Past lives don't exist. No, you haven't done your homework right. Taste it and then talk about it. The Buddha did. His students did. And do. Continuous. Present continuous tense. So, a few questions. Yes?
Thank you again for the Dharma this week. And you mentioned a metaphor going, you want to go to San Francisco taking different freeway and then the correct one, and you take 5 going south, you reach San Diego, but also probably you can find the same thing in San Francisco, in San Diego.
What do you mean? No. That's not the objective, though. The use of that analogy was simply to indicate the differences of, you have an idea. People want to reach somewhere, attain a state. Let's say they want to attain calm and peace and not be subject to pain. Okay, let's take that as San Francisco or San Diego. You pick the city. But they go ahead and do something that is counter to that. Something that doesn't go along with that. And that's the passion that I brought in. Pursuing passion is like wanting, or actually has nothing to do with wanting, but pursuing passion is like getting on a freeway with a full tank of gas, with an engine and a car that works and there's no obstacles, and you're headed south on the 5 South. You're going to hit San Diego. Period. It's only a matter of time. Unless there's an accident, but there isn't an accident. That's the point I'm trying to say. So don't hold literally these images and saying, well, you can find the same thing in San Diego.
This is my question. That was
okay.
Concerning goals, concerning pursuit. In the spiritual side of Buddhism, we go.
Say it again. Sorry, I didn't understand.
Okay, in the spiritual side of Buddhism, our pursuit it's get enlightened, nirvana follows the path, the path that we're gonna allow to get there. On the secular path, we have goals as well. How and understanding goals like attachments, that I want to pursue that in such a way as an attachment. How we can, under the perspective of Buddhism, we can understand goals.
There is no difference between the Eightfold Path in secular Buddhism and somebody who's wearing the robes in a cave somewhere, or doing their work, their meditation. In fact, secular Buddhists also, to my understanding, hold dearly to meditative practice. So there isn't a difference. Bhante Shanti is right now in Sri Lanka. He had a goal of going there. So the ticket was purchased according to that goal. He had to go to the right gate, to the right airline.
So
these
are no attachment?
Well, depends. Anything could be an attachment. I can hold on to my breath. That's an attachment. So please don't add that distinction when there's no need for it between the two. So, and I'll address that after the talk. Yes?
Thank you for your talk.
Uh-huh.
What is the homework
any other questions after that? We'll do it after the ceremony. Yes?
What is the homework that someone's supposed to be working on to come to see the full doctrine of the Buddha? So for example, I don't believe in rebirth. But I'm at this place in my own journey where I do trust the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Right? So I feel like it's not in my experience. I haven't tested that yet. I know I don't believe in it now. If I were to come to believe in it, if I were to come to understand it for myself, right, I'm open to that happening. But like, what are the things that, as someone who's committed to this path, like what I need to be doing to put myself in a position to come to understand that for myself? Because reading about it and hearing it doesn't convince me of rebirth. But I trust the teachings and I trust the Buddha, and I know that there might be something I can do to come to see that for myself. What would I do to see that for myself? The
way you described it, perfect. That's all. I wouldn't change a thing. One time a person, I think it was mentioned yesterday after the retreat, a person came in to ask the Buddha, so your students must have a belief in you, right? They believe in you, right? Presuming that was the case, because that's what it was with everybody at that time, with every teacher, every tradition. And the Buddha, to demonstrate his point, called over his second in command, his chief disciple when it came to wisdom, Venerable Sariputta. He was second to the Buddha only. That can tell us about his wisdom. Intact, impeccable. And he asked Venerable Sariputta, Sariputta, do you believe in me? Do you believe in the teachings because it's me handing it to you? Do you believe? And he says, no, Reverend Sir. No. I practice it. I've tasted it. That has become my solid foundation. So that's the same thing that I am saying and you just echoed. I wouldn't be inviting you to say something or to have a belief in the Buddha. No, no, no. You said it already, but that's the critical part that you mentioned. I trust in the Buddha. That means, to me at least, trusting in his awakening, in Nibbana, in the truth of it, in the practice. That's all you need. People said durian is the most horrible fruit. Stinky fruit, this and that. And at the same time, I read somewhere that it was the king of all fruits. Guess what? I didn't believe either one until I tested it. I tried it. Yeah, it has an interesting smell, but it is delicious to me. So, there you go. Not to create a grotesque image between comparisons, but you got what I was saying.
Well, on rebirth, you don't have a choice. It's going to happen. Your goal is to understand why. And there's the 12 causes that bring you to that. And that's your goal, is to try to understand that. But yeah, you're coming back.
Unless you break through, of course. But you're going to be the one who finds that out.
Thank you, Chandana.
Thank you.